Hi, I'm Allie. Recently, I've been thinking about fear a lot and re-examining why it's probably one of the most important hidden things that are preventing you from being your best self and preventing you from reaching whatever it is that you really want right now. Fear is the easiest way that you become controlled. It's built into structures and conditioned into you until it becomes invisible and you no longer question it. When was the last time you really examined, what is it that I'm the most afraid of, and how is that fear blocking me from getting what I want? Okay, unless you've spent an extended amount of time really facing your deepest fears, being aware of them, and intentionally transcending them, chances are that many unconscious aspects of your life right now as you're watching this video are actually being controlled by your fear. Fear is the mind killer. This quote from Dune literally blew my mind. I mean, the whole movie had so many levels of symbolism and metaphors, and I'm obsessed with Frank Herbert now, and I think he is brilliant. But this quote is cliche, it sounds dramatic, but I really think it's essentially one of the most relevant parables of mankind. So let me just get a little more abstract for a quick second, and then I'll explain why all of this matters too, no matter how big or small your goal is. Whether it's finding a career you love, finding love, transforming yourself, whatever it is, I'm going to go really deep into it first because I want you to really understand it. If you really understand all of this at a core level, I promise that you will live your life differently forevermore. Fear impacts our thinking and decision-making loops, usually in negative ways. Do you notice in intense situations when people start acting out of fear, actions tend to become a little unethical and people start losing the rationality of their higher self and being? And when we think about some of the worst things that have happened in the world and to societies, it's like, how could that ever have happened? Usually the answer is due to fear or due to power. And it's not a coincidence that these two things are often linked together. Power uses fear to maintain itself. Fear impacts our thinking and decision-making loop, and usually in not so great ways. Do you notice in high-stakes situations when people start acting out of fear, they start doing stupid things, they start doing unethical things, people essentially start to lose the rationality of their higher self. And when we think about some of the worst things that happen in the world and in society, not past tense, present tense, usually the answer is due to some sort of fear or power dynamic. And it's not a coincidence that these two are often linked together. It's not a coincidence because power uses fear to maintain itself. As humans, we need to be rational. You won't make the best choices that serve you and those around you when you're acting out of fear. And that's why I'm making this video today. I want you to really understand this whole framework so that you can start changing your life by controlling your fear and not letting it control you. You're not going to make the best choices when you're acting out of fear. And I want you to make the best choices for yourself because 1, that's all that you can control in this lifetime. And 2, because good choices are the way to a better life. I learned this myself through many years, the hard way over and over again. It's super hard to experiment and come up with fear, but it's something that I've been practicing the past few years as if my survival literally depends on it. And in some ways, I believe that it does. First, because everything in life comes with some risk of dying, and I get really anxious about it. Second, because I'm a dreamer, and if I lose my dreams to fear, then what part of me has actually survived? If fear prevents you from showing up authentically and being yourself, if it prevents you from being and creating the change that you want to see, or just doing the things that you actually care about, if it prevents you from connecting with other people because you're scared, and if it prevents you from leaving dangerous or toxic situations that are not meant for you, whether that's careers, friendships, relationships, anything else, then what kind of life are you really living? For me, I decided a long time ago, and I decide over and over again every day, that I will not live a life surrendering to my fear, no matter how much fear I face. And I studied economics in college, so I tend to kind of build models around everything and really think through different inputs and outputs. And in my head, this is just the most logical, optimized way to live. It's not the easiest, but I think it has the highest expected value, because fear is one of those things that the more you succumb to it, the more fear you find yourself surrounded by. You have to fix the way you think about fear to fix every other problem that fear could be creating in your life. Fear is a mind killer. And the later part of this quote is, I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. When the fear is gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. It's a pretty intense quote. I also think it's super zen in some ways, and we'll talk a little more about this later. Now, let me ask you, why do we care so much about the mind? I mean, everyone has a mind, and it works for the most part. If you go to school, you have a job, you have a working mind. I'm not the most rational person, and I tend to live my life led by my heart. The reason that the mind is important is because fear will enter your mind first. Today, right now, I want you to see fear for what it really is. I've thought about fear for a really long time in trying to overcome my own overwhelming and sometimes paralyzing fears. I've meditated on it for hours and hours, and I realize ultimately it's the age-old question of life and death. The deepest, most primal fear is your fear of death, which is tied to your survival. If you can transcend the fear of death on the deepest level, you'll have ultimately broken past your own fear. It's not easy or even necessary to get to this extreme level, but I think that's why in so many famous movies like Dune or so many classic stories and cultures, there's kind of this ultimatum between life and death that exemplifies transcendence or submission to fear. For example, it's like the samurais who face their life or death before their fights. It's like the Western gun duels of like the cowboy face-offs. Essentially, these characters, in the moment before their death, we see their choice to succumb to their fear or transcend their fear. And this repeats in movies and stories throughout time because ultimately this is the age-old and most essential question and fear that we all have. It's one of the biggest challenges that all of us are going to have to face in our lifetime. Whether you're conscious of it right now or not, maybe we face it later in life, but every single one of us faces it. Maybe animals do, maybe they don't. If you're watching this video, you're probably human. For me, thinking about it through so many years, fear just ultimately comes down to the choice between life or death. I can also say through experience that the way I think about fear now and my choice to face fear in most situations has changed my trajectory, and I want to share it with you, which is why I'm making this video. I've spent a lot of time thinking through fear on an abstract level, but also evaluating how fear prevents people from reaching their goals, how fear infiltrates our subconscious beliefs and limits us and limits our potential. So if this is a problem that you're facing right now, DM me the word inspires because I want to hear about it. I want to hear about your current experience with fear. Fear is a mind killer. And if you don't employ your mind, you're going to miss a huge part of the equation that ultimately creates your inner unity and your self-actualization. Be a rational human. That's the only way you're ever going to limit your ultimate suffering in this world and one day even transcend it. Your own liberation brings liberation to all. And I think that's a quote from Andrew Cohen. I made this video to show you the importance of understanding fear and to tell you that you need to protect your mind like it's everything you've got. Because you use your mind and your heart to make choices, and that ability to make a conscious choice is the only true freedom that you, me, and everyone will ever have in this lifetime. All you have in this lifetime is choice. Every second, all that you have is choice. Fight, flight, fight or flight, these are responses. And sometimes we respond in one way so much that they become built-in patterns. If you're a kid surrounded by fear, growing up in fear, your fear response is going to be way more active than an average person, similar to a war veteran. But even in the most extreme situations, we still have a choice. As hard as it is sometimes to acknowledge that and even feel like we have a choice, remember that you have a choice. I've thought about this so much. It's hard to move past our fears, but it's equally as hard and brings about equally as much suffering if we surrender to our fears and hide from them for a lifetime, because fear multiplies. Your imagination goes crazy in the darkness of fear. We can actually override our body's fear response. I made a video last week about how to break the pattern of emotional overwhelm, which isn't like specific to fear, but you can definitely apply it to fear. A disclaimer: the last thing is, for the idiots out there like myself who might be watching this video, don't be dumb about it. I will honestly say I've sometimes also been screwed because I'm too fearless in trying to overcome my fears. That also puts me in not ideal situations. So always there's a balance. Fear is a natural response in our body built to help us survive in extreme situations. So if you genuinely feel like you're in danger or you can't win this fight, like you're actually in danger, it's not just a danger of your mind or your conditioning, it's better to run. Obviously, like, don't risk your life unnecessarily trying to fight your fear. Take it with a grain of salt. I think the sweet spot is when you use your fear as a tool to guide you, but you are the master. It is not your master. You're the master of your fear, and you need to separate yourself from your fear. Otherwise, if there's no separation between you and the fear that you experience, you're screwed. You're screwed. And you're going to be someone who's extremely easy to control. And when it keeps happening on an individual level, then society also becomes easier to control by a greater power, and we don't want that. If it happens on an interpersonal level, it could keep happening until a whole structure or system becomes controlled by people in power who wield fear. I'm not saying that power itself is bad, but with every powerful person, to use black or white terms, there are good people in power and bad people in power. That's a very black and white view of the world. It's obviously way more complex than that. I'm just saying, like, power isn't always a meritocracy, right? It's not always like the most ethical, kind-hearted people who are in power. If you got to this point in the video, I hope you learned something today in this video that really uncovered or illuminated some aspect of yourself that can help you go out there and get that thing that you want in life right now, to help you transform and become an even better version of yourself. Again, if you want to bounce ideas off of me on this topic, DM me Inspires and we can talk about it. The last word before I end this video is to stop being controlled. Understand your fear once and for all and work with it. Stop holding yourself back when you could literally be anyone you want. So with much love, as always, I know this topic was a little intense, but it's just something that I really care about and I believe limits people from being their best self. So I wanted to share. If you liked it, thank you for watching, and hope to see you soon.